So I basically predicted the end of Snowfall, right? I got some stuff wrong, but not completely wrong, right? And Franklin's still trash. Going into this last season of Snowfall, I wasn't rooting for or against anyone in particular. I knew it would all come crumbling down, so I was just interested in learning how we would get to that point, what alliances would form or fall through, and who would kill or be killed. Knowing that this was the last season, I really wanted to take some time really quick to talk about the cinematography of Snowfall. I don't think the technical side of things get appreciated enough for this show. Everything always feels so purposeful in every scene. I took note of scenes with Franklin and Veranique, and then Leon and Wanda this season. The lighting in a lot of these scenes is just gorgeous. Also, I think we got some really great monologues this season from Franklin, Cissy, and Louie. I feel like Isaiah John is going to be a problem in the future. It's been nice to see him grow as an actor throughout the series, and I think he is just so great now. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do next. Tamara Taylor's always great. Amon Joseph's always great too. In terms of the writing this season, there were definitely some really clear themes that they were trying to get across at some points. I thought they were being a little too on the nose, specifically with the idea of reconciling with the past. It's kind of what the entire season was about, this idea of atonement, like karma, like your past coming back to you kind of thing. But in the episode Door of No Return, where we begin in Ghana with Leon and Wanda, Leon literally sees a billboard that says the errors of the past must be corrected in order to reestablish the confidence of our people in a secure future. I don't think we needed the billboard. They said message. On the other side of things, I think they hinted at other themes in a more subtle way that worked for me. There was the repeated idea of making money the right way. Franklin burns Todd on the stove, and then he says that if they want to make money the right way, he'll teach them how to cook rock. That's the right way. Franklin yells at Jerome about doing things the right way. At one point, I think it's like, what does right even mean anymore to our characters? There's also the idea of personal responsibility. No one on this show can apologize for their actions without also blaming someone else, or just talk about what happened in the past without immediately blaming someone else. All these characters can do is point their finger at other characters. Louie, Teddy, and Franklin in particular are like that Spider-Man meme. I feel like this separates Skully and Leon and Wanda from the others, and I think that's the reason that those characters I just named seem like they can achieve some sort of peace toward the end of the show, while all of our other characters struggle for it, even Jerome. And I'll talk about Skully and Leon in a little bit, but they are sort of bonded in the death of Skully's daughter, Tiana, being the catalyst toward this change in lifestyle for the both of them. In my video about Louie, I talked about the idea of us versus them. I think it was that video. And it sort of persists throughout the whole series, and there's nowhere that we saw that more clearly displayed than in this season. In my last video about Snowfall, I said that we would feel Alton's presence. Not only was his death really important in that final episode, but Cissy begins talking about the white man and as an institution, as an enemy this season, much like Alton would have if he were still a living character. They already had the same ideas. They were both Black Panthers. She really sort of is the one to fill in his shoes and start to sort of push that angle. And she tries to show Franklin for the billionth time that Teddy is not his friend. And Franklin is pretty much against everyone at some point during the season. So everyone is a them to Franklin. Along with this, though, is the idea that there's no difference between us and them. Look at how our alliances are all over the place. At first, it was very clearly established who was on whose side, and then they all started dipping in each other's stuff. At one point, Gustavo is working for the KGB and the DEA and the CIA and Franklin. And all of these organizations are going after each other. I wanted to come back really super quickly and say that I forgot in my ramble to talk about Gustavo. and his role this season. I didn't have a whole lot to say about it, that's probably why, but in my prediction video, I did say something about Gustavo potentially coming back and having a bigger role this season because last season he seemed to fade into the background so much. That ended up coming true. Like I said before, I really do like Gustavo. I think his situation turned out as good as he could hope for. I also wanted to say I recently moved and I live on a very busy street now in a place with very large windows. My mic audio has never been good, but it's definitely not going to be good now. And so I just wanted to apologize for that and say that I'm working on it. We're constantly shown, even though one party claims moral or legal superiority over the other, they're all just out for their own interests. They're all the same. I wanted to talk about how Kane and Skully are near perfect foils. I talk about foils a lot on this channel. They're used all the time in media to highlight certain qualities other characters that sort of oppose each other. And Skully and Kane had like the exact opposite reactions to similar situations in that their families were killed and there were assassination attempts made on their life by this one party. I feel like if there's anybody that should want to kill Franklin, it's Skully. First, Franklin worked with Manboy to kill Skully because remember, Manboy and Skully, even though they were family, they were fighting and he couldn't be allied with both of them. He had to pick a side. He chose Manboy and tried to kill Skully and failed. After that, Leon kills his daughter Tiana and Franklin protects him. And then Franklin kills Manboy and then Jerome kills Skully's wife. So his daughter, wife, and brother are all dead because of people from Franklin's organization. If Skully wanted Franklin's head on a stick, I don't think we could be upset at him for that. But he does not. He's coping through spirituality. Kane, on the other hand, rained down on Franklin the first chance he got for killing his brother Kevin several years ago. Then, after Louie sends Buckley after him, Kane partners with Franklin and called a pimp to sell Louie into sex trafficking and waits to watch her get sexually assaulted. They are on opposite ends of the spectrum for sure. Opposite ends of extreme. In this final season, we got an example of a couple of the things I actually like about Franklin. He's a good leader when he wants to be. In this scene, when he walks into Kane's cookhouse and starts taking over, he essentially tells them that they're not being productive enough. He does permanently disfigure this guy named Todd and then he kills him later, but he rolls up his sleeves and prepares to cook the rock himself and he doesn't complain about it. I think that when he wants to show his good leadership qualities, they are absolutely there for him to put on display. Franklin's also really unintentionally funny. He always has been.
Said you wanted to cook, didn't you? Cook that nigga!
There's the fact that his mannerisms are just so ridiculous and over the top, but there's also the fact that he takes himself so seriously. At some points, you just can't help but laugh. Here's this comment I found that I wanted to share with you. If Hollywood need a man to play a character that is always stressed about something and can make the smallest problem into a universe-ending threat, Damson is the man for the job. That is hilarious. If Franklin isn't stressed out, he's not breathing. That is until his downfall, but we'll get to that in a second. Going into this season, Franklin wanted his $73 million. He wanted to secure the downtown property, and then he wanted to live happily ever after with Veranique, walk off into the sunset. We know none of that happened. At the end of the day, Pride was Franklin's downfall, evidenced by the way that they literally played Kendrick's song Pride over the final shot of the show. It's too on the nose sometimes, just too on the nose. There is nothing that Franklin wasn't willing to give for just the chance to get his money back. There was nothing he wasn't willing to give for the opportunity to get his money back. And this is a ridiculous amount of money. It's more money than most of us will ever see in our lifetime. I can't even imagine what $73 million looks like. I'm poor. He wants to put a lien on his mother's house, and then he wants to get a loan from Leon, and then he pulls a gun on Leon when he says no. He pulls a gun on Jerome. He calls his mama a bitch. At the end, after Leon finally gets him to come out of his house, after it's established that Franklin has lost everything and become a hermit, Franklin can't help but make fun of Wanda for her previous drug addiction, while he is an unemployed alcoholic and a shell of his former self. And his alcoholism comes along quickly, just like Wanda's addiction did. Leon offers him a job at the shelter, the one that was so important to Franklin's mother and father, and Franklin declines. And then right at the end, he finally loses his mother's house after ignoring the notices that we see on his front door when Leon approaches at first. Leon offers to pay the property tax on the house so that Franklin has somewhere to stay. Boom, simple. But Franklin declines, saying,
I'm free. Free from all of it. My fucking way, not yours.
At a certain point, Franklin knew that the loss was inevitable, but he had to fight to the very end. Also, let's talk about Teddy and Franklin really quickly, because they really are two peas in a pod, aren't they? Despite having enough money to live happily, Franklin wanted to burn California to the ground because Teddy stole his money. Right? Teddy said that he took the $73 million to give to the war effort, but then he reveals that he took the money because he didn't like that Franklin left him. I know Teddy likely would have never let Franklin make a huge business move, like safely acquiring the downtown property anyway, but the fact remains that we did all of this because of hurt feelings. All along, Teddy was breaking his own rules. If you remember, at the top of season 5, Teddy was out of the picture and Franklin was dealing with CIA agent Grady. Teddy came back and killed Grady, told the CIA that he had disappeared or something and slid right back into his old position, and then scolded Franklin for blurring the line between personal and business. Lo and behold, Teddy considered his relationship with Franklin very personal. I don't think he considered Franklin a friend necessarily. I think he considered him like a cellmate. There's a saying, I don't know if you've heard it, misery loves company. Teddy felt like a failure in more ways than one. He failed his father, his brother, his son, his ex, and they really didn't want him in the CIA either. This was the only way that Teddy could do some sort of work that he felt value in, even if he could never be acknowledged by his superiors or the people he thought he was saving. Franklin, on the other hand, got to be simultaneously the most loved and hated person in his neighborhood. He got to be successful and braggadocious about it, but the entire time, he was under Teddy's thumb. He was being controlled by Teddy. There was no other way for Franklin to find another source or to otherwise get Teddy out of the picture. He figured that as long as he was stuck in this sort of purgatory of the drug market, and by he I mean Teddy, so was Franklin. Teddy could control Franklin in a way that he couldn't his personal relationships or other aspects of his job. When he could no longer control Franklin, he wanted to punish him for leaving him in this situation. That's what I think. I also feel like the way that he lost Veranique was pretty poetic. She told her mother that she wouldn't leave Franklin because he always told her the truth and he hadn't put his hands on her. And that's pretty low bar. The bar's on the floor. Then he went on to lie to her and put his hands on her, choked her. He lost both his mother and Veranique. And then when we get to the end, he talks about how he hates them both. I feel sorry for Franklin, not just because he's become someone drowning in his own failure, but because after becoming a millionaire at such a young age and so quickly, falling into squalor has to feel like purgatory. After discovering what it really feels like to live, to fly planes because you feel like it, because you want to travel the world, to risk your life daily, the monotonous life of an alcoholic and future hoarder has to be mind-numbing. This is also something that I said about Teddy. Franklin has to face the constant reminder that a much more exciting and fulfilling life exists and that he'll never be a part of that life again. How many people did Franklin kill? How many lives did he ruin just to end up homeless and crestfallen? Just to end up jumping for joy over change from a $20 bill? Then there's the fact that somewhere out there, Franklin's son is growing up without him. He's being raised by his single mother, just like Franklin was. It's sort of perpetuating this cycle. While Franklin has succumbed to addiction and alcoholism, after being a part of a large organization, his son will grow up without him. And that's exactly what happened between Alton and Franklin as well. Louie made it clear that she wanted to continue growing her empire this season. Not only that, she just wanted some respect. Remember when Louie said,
"Because we have money, right? Power. Respect." But no, you did. Because I've been running this thing, right? And you see that. But our customers, all they see is you. Every deal we make, they talking to you. They look at me long enough to wink or lick their lips. They ain't dealing with me.
She had begun to feel inferior and felt that more success in the drug game would quell those insecurities and assert her dominance as the only female queenpin in this area. Louie and Cissy ended up facing a similar dilemma this season. They wanted to be taken seriously by their male counterparts. Louie is the only female figure in a drug game dominated by men, and Cissy wanted to bring harm to Teddy for killing Alton and didn't like that he didn't see her as a threat. When Kane kills Jerome, things are understandably more heavy for our characters, especially because in the same conversation between Jerome and Louie, Jerome mentions wanting to end things before they are killed. But unfortunately, I couldn't help but feel kind of indifferent to his death. He had just killed Beverly, one of the women Franklin had writing for him, over information that she didn't even have, as her partner begged for her life. A little earlier, we see a man and child crying over a man that Jerome killed. And to be clear, I think that this is done intentionally. I think they sort of added in these things that would make us give Jerome the side eye before killing him off, so that there was this sort of ambivalence. But at Jerome's death, this is the first time that one of our main characters has died in a while. So we had Kevin back in season 2 and later Alton, if you want to count him. Manboy died in season 4, but he was a villain, so I don't think that counts. So this is a huge deal. Our main characters don't usually die. I don't know. It just didn't make me really sad, but I understood why they did that, I guess. In exchange for saving her, Louie gives up Teddy to Franklin, and after a talk with Gustavo, Franklin warns her of a raid right as it's happening. So she has to flee the house on foot. The implication is that she will live the rest of her life on the run because she's wanted by the DEA. A lot of criticism for this season was that Louie wasn't held accountable and didn't take responsibility for what she had done. But Franklin also had a really hard time taking responsibility, though he did admit to being the devil. He, to the very end, had a hard time saying what he did. I would also say that Louie's fate is much worse than Franklin's. Though we don't see Louie living miserable like Franklin, the implication is there. It will never be over for Louie. Also, I think she and Jerome were like a match, and I think his death will affect her for the rest of her life. When you look back at Louie as a character, when you think about her time with Claudia and how before she got with Jerome, the implication is that she was a sex worker of some sort. I think you can understand a bit more how this dominance is so important to her. It's sort of the first time that she's had the upper hand with anything. You have to remember that she left Jerome for Claudia initially because she felt like she wasn't being respected. And so we know respect is a big thing for her. She has all of this power. She has all of this money. She has all of these people doing what she says, but at the same time, she doesn't have their respect. So it feels like, what did she even do all of this work for? I understand why she feels inferior and why she feels like she has to do these things and do more and be more to gain this respect that she still feels that she hasn't obtained. And then to live a life on the run means that she's going to have to put her trust in other people, going to have to depend on others. She can't be dominant. She leaves with the clothes on her back and the shoes on her feet. She doesn't have an ID, a passport, a bus pass, a library card. For someone like Louie, who all she wants is her autonomy, to have to always live in people's barns and sheds and basements and shit. Alright, time for the best character on the show. I don't think anyone would argue with the fact that Leon is the best character on the show. He was written, developed, and performed really well. Isaiah John is a national treasure. Protect him at all costs. When we see Leon for the first time this season, he's in Accra, Ghana with Wanda. There are all of these beautiful shots. He and Wanda seem like they are really doing well in their relationship. They get married and they feel at peace for once. Since we met these characters, we haven't been able to see them experience happiness like this. There's always a crisis to avert or an enemy to defeat or something. So it's nice to see them be carefree. I will say the last time we had a pair of carefree characters in a foreign country like this, Alton got disappeared. So it's good that this leads to a more happy ending, you know what I mean? They go back to California and they're immediately swept up into the chaos that is the drug market imploding itself. The crowded communal feeling and setting that we see from the scenes in Ghana juxtaposes the crowded feeling of the projects back in California. At one point in the show, Einstein, one of the guys in the project, says this about Africa.
Y'all went to the motherfucking motherland.
That shit was fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like nothing I ever imagined.
Primitive as shit, I bet. Bones in their noses and like that?
Nah. Ghana was once an ancient Ashanti empire.
Wait. So y'all mean to tell me they had cities and clothes and shit?
Einstein is a smart one in their group. That's why they call him Einstein. And he makes a completely moronic statement like this. Not only is his statement ironic in itself, but it's also ironic that the smartest one in this group doesn't know that the continent of Africa isn't just one big country, and that entire continent of Africa is not entirely and completely poverty stricken. I think it would have been really easy for the writers to start us with Leon already stateside after his visit to Africa, but the intention of having Leon not only find happiness and peace in Africa, but to educate himself on the history of tribes in Ghana and their cultural practices definitely establishes Leon as having gone through positive change. In one of my other videos, I talk about how Leon and Franklin are foils. So while Franklin's reaction to a loss is to double his offense and defense, Leon's solution is to re-examine things entirely. On top of that, instead of going into a new community and trying to assert himself, Leon learns the cultures and customs of this community in order to become a part of it. Of course, this is short-lived because when Leon goes back to the projects and sees that Dion is running their neighborhood into the ground, they have this Simba versus Scar battle and Leon takes control of the projects again. However, he doesn't dive back into the game because he lost some money or has a vendetta. He does so because he wants better for his neighborhood. When he sees that Dion is shooting out the streetlights and Einstein isn't going to school, Leon has to do what he thinks is right, even if it means sacrificing his own peace of mind, because when you think about it, Leon can't be at peace when his neighborhood isn't. He tied his identity to the projects, so much so that he began running the neighborhood over caring for his mom and siblings in previous seasons. He can't just stand by and watch it all go to shit. When he realizes that it's sort of futile to try to stay and run this area while also trying to stay out of the drug market, he goes back to Ghana to continue to heal. And then when he comes back, he's still running the shelter. He's still doing stuff for the community. I love Leon. I will say, I feel like the writers forgot about Leon's mom and siblings, but I did like seeing his relationship with Cissy get a little screen time. Leon's philosophy ended up being more in line with Alton's and Cissy's anyway, more than Franklin's was. And I'll mention that Cissy wanted Wanda to take over managing their properties. I think it's so poetic that these two were the characters that made it out in the best condition, considering that their situations were so dire at one point. They both went to rock bottom and came back up. TV shows do this thing, I think it's called opening image, final image. It's when the framing and cinematography of the opening shot mirrors the final shot, and it can be done at the beginning and end of like the whole series, but it can also be done at the beginning and end of the season. It's supposed to show us, like in a really quick way, how things have changed. Through the opening image, final image of this show, we can see a difference in the shots themselves. The first season is kind of in hypercolor, while the final season has this blue sort of dingy cast over everything. The neighborhood itself has much less life in the series finale. Then we look at Franklin and it's sad to see him and compare him to the Franklin from the pilot. Franklin from the pilot, the neighborhood knows him. It's easy for him to walk up to these kids and demand that they return the candy they stole from the ice cream truck because he has respect in this neighborhood. In the series finale, when Leon asks these guys on the block if Franklin lives in his home, they barely even acknowledge him. They say,
Yeah, someone in there. If you want to call that shit living.
There might even be an implication that these are the same boys. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that, but it would be cool. The opening shot was so warm and welcoming and inviting, and the final image is not. It's cold. It's emotionless. It's sad. It was announced that there would be a spinoff of Snowfall that focuses on G-Rap and gang beef. Wanda is supposed to be the link between the two shows, but as it stands, I'm not sure how she would facilitate that connection. Perhaps she and Leon's work with the shelter and Wanda's previous work in property management with Franklin, Veranique, and Cissy. Maybe she starts a label? I have no idea. I hope they do some fan service with the show though. Like, I hope we get to see Franklin's son at some point. That would be cool. Maybe we get some other little cameos from characters that we know. What I don't want is for Snowfall to turn to power. We don't need a billion spinoffs. I think one really good spinoff is plenty. FX tends to be pretty careful with the projects they greenlight, so I have high hopes. And if they're bringing the entertainment industry into things, there will be no shortage of different directions that they can take it. Yeah, argue with me if you want in the comments. Bye.